Autumn had arrived, and the prevailing winds of the clear season made virtually all lanes to the south impossible to navigate for at least the next 2 months. Were things less bleary, she might also have noticed, had she taken the time to head down to the docks, which perhaps could have been managed at sword point, that the ship was not the usual bark or trader, nor a military dromon, but a sleek, gracile thing, styled in a manner not employed in the past 50 years by any shipbuilders of the Empire. Arcane carvings adorned the blade-like prow, minuscule shapes detailing serpents and worms, the panels sweeping back along the gunwales almost halfway down the length of the ship. The stern was squared and strangely high, with a side-mounted steering oar. The crew numbered about a dozen, quiet for sailors, and disinclined to leave the ship as it lolled alongside the dock. A lone figure had disembarked as soon as the gangplank had settled, shortly before dawn. For Hellion, these details came later. The runner that found her was a local brat who, when he wasn't breaking laws, loitered around the docks in the hopes of being hired as a guide for visitors. The fragment of parchment he handed her was, she could feel, of some quality. On it was written a terse message, the contents of which made her scowl. "All right, lad, describe the man gave this to you." "I can't." Hellion glanced back at the 4 guards standing behind her on the street corner. One of them stepped behind the boy and picked him up, one-handed, gripping the back of the ratty tunic. A quick shake. "Loosed your memory some?" Hellion asked. "I hope so, because I ain't paying coin." "I can't remember. I looked right into his face, Sergeant. Only, I can't remember what it looked like." She studied the boy for a moment, then grunted and turned away. The guard set the lad down, but did not release his grip. "Let him go, Herb." The lad scampered away. With a vague gesture for her guards to follow, she set off. The Septarch district was the city's most peaceful area, not through any particular diligence on Hellion's part, however. There were few commercial buildings, and those residences that existed served to house acolytes and support staff of the dozen temples commanding the district's main avenue. Thieves who wanted to stay alive did not steal from temples. She led her squad onto the avenue, noting once again how decrepit many of the temples had become. The Paralt spiders liked the ornate architecture and the domes and lesser towers, and it seemed the priests were losing the battle. Chitinous rubbish crackled and crunched underfoot as they walked. Years ago, the first night of Istral-Fenidan, just past, would have been marked with an island-wide fete, filled with sacrifices and propitiations to Kartul's patron goddess Drek, the worm of autumn, and the archpriest of the Grand Temple, the Demi-Drek, would lead a procession through the city on a carpet of fecund rubbish, his bared feet sweeping through maggot and worm-ridden refuse. Children would chase lame dogs down the alleys, and those they cornered they would stone to death whilst shrieking their goddess's name. Convicted criminals sentenced to execution would have their skins publicly flailed, their long bones broken. Then the hapless victims would be flung into pits aswarm with carrion beetles and red fireworms that would devour them over the course of 4 or 5 days. All of this was before the Malazan conquest, of course. The Emperor's principal target had been the cult of Drek. He'd well understood that the heart of Kartul's power was the Grand Temple, and the island's master sorcerers were the priests and priestesses of Drek, ruled over by the Demi-Drek. Further, it was no accident that the night of slaughter that preceded the naval battle and the subsequent invasion, a night led by the infamous Dancer and Surly, mistress of the Claw, had so thoroughly obliterated the cult sorcerers, including the Demi-Drek. For the archpriest of the Grand Temple had only recently gained his eminence via an internal coup, and the ousted rival had been none other than Teishren, the Emperor's new, at the time, High Mage. Hellion had but heard tales of the celebrations, since they had been outlawed as soon as the Malazan occupiers settled the imperial mantle upon the island. But she had been told often enough about those glorious days of long ago, when Kartul Island had been at the pinnacle of civilization. The present sordid condition was the fault of the Malazans, everyone agreed. Autumn had in truth arrived upon the island and its